Several years ago, I was part of a group that traveled to England for 10 days or so. Of course, our trip both began and ended in London, where our tour guide took us to see all the most famous sites: Windsor Palace, Trafalgar Square, Westminster Abbey, those sorts of places. Now, they were all interesting in their own right, but I was actually a lot more fascinated by something that was not on the official tour, but that our group used every single day when we were there in London: the London Underground. Yes, the London subway. And I figure it must have been the former engineering student in me that found that so interesting. But you know, the first time that we used the London Underground, our tour guide passed the time by filling us in a little bit on its history. You know, it's the oldest underground subway in the world, and there's not one neighborhood in London that doesn't have numerous tunnels crisscrossing underneath it. You know, in some sections, the subway trains are actually traveling a mile underneath the surface of the earth, a mile down. Of course, during World War II, many of those tunnels were used as bomb shelters for protection for the people. Sometimes they lived in those tunnels for weeks on end. And now, every day, more than 4 million people use the underground. So day and night, 24/7, trains suddenly appear from underground and drop off their passengers, pick up new passengers, and disappear underground again. You know, given the sheer number of people that use it and the age and the complexity of that tunnel system, it's amazing that somehow or other people actually successfully get to their destinations. Well, that somehow or other is due to the hard work of thousands of people, the employees of the underground, right? Engineers, computer techs, camera operators, ticket sellers, electricians, mechanics, subway police, and of course the men and women that lay and repair the tracks. Those millions of commuters are only able to reach their destinations in relative peace and safety because of all those folks who work every day to keep the system flowing, to keep the pathways clear. In our gospel this weekend, John the Baptist is described to us as a prophet who's urging people to remove any and all obstacles from the pathway and to make a clear and a straight road for the Lord to come among his people. And of course, as we know, a lot of people responded to John's urgings by going down to the Jordan River and being baptized by him because they wanted their hearts to be holy, to be pure and blameless, as St. Paul says in our second reading today. In other words, they wanted to make a clear path for the Lord into their hearts and into their lives. We heard similar things, too, in our first reading from the prophet Baruch. You know, Baruch lived during a time when the Jewish people were exiled, when they didn't have a homeland, when they were living like nomads in the desert. But, you know, in spite of their exile, what does Baruch say to them? He says this: "Take off your robe of mourning and misery, and put on instead the splendor of glory from God forever." In spite of the challenges, in spite of your exile, in spite of the struggles, take off your robe of mourning and misery. Put on instead the splendor of glory from God forever. Now, Baruch is encouraging the ancient Israelites to live in hope, to live in gladness every day, because he knows that one day the Lord's going to make a straight highway for them to walk in freedom. As he writes, that Israel may advance secure in the glory of God. You know, Baruch might as well be talking to you and me. Well, of course, he is talking to us, isn't he? He is talking to us because we live in exile too. This world's not our permanent home. We're just pilgrims passing through. And just like the exiled Jewish people of Baruch's time, we too sometimes walk through the valley of tears in this life. Our faith is attacked and tested. Our hearts get broken. Sadness and suffering and struggles and anxieties and disappointments enter into every human life, into all our lives. But unlike the people of Baruch's time, we have a distinct advantage, and it's that we live now after the first Christmas, not before it. We live after the first Christmas, not before it. That is, we've already seen the salvation of God. come near to us in Jesus Christ. And we get the privilege of meeting him one-on-one, personally, intimately, every time we receive Holy Communion in the Eucharist. Like the Philippians that Paul wrote to in our second reading, we've already heard the good news of Jesus risen from the dead, and he proves it to us every week from this altar, every time that we come and celebrate Mass. So now it's our turn to be road builders and pathfinders for others in this world. It's our turn to make a straight highway and a clear path for the Lord into our world, into our culture and society. And we do that by his grace, of course, but we do that, we make that path straight when we take the initiative in loving other people, when we choose to share goodness and kindness and compassion with those around us, when our knowledge and our understanding of God's truth and our Catholic faith continues to grow all throughout our life. And most importantly, we do it when we choose to let Christ completely take the lead in every aspect of our lives. You know, the average person traveling each day on the London Underground has no idea all the things that other people do to make their journey safe, to make their journey successful. But without that army of good and ordinary folks that are working behind the scenes every day, there'd be no journey for those travelers. There'd be no successful arrival at their destination. In this world, too, in our time and age, for things to go well, for us to arrive successfully at our ultimate destination, the Lord needs good and faithful and ordinary people like you and me, like all of us, to clear the highway and to keep his pathway open.